This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the visual version of a mic drop, isn't it, right? Boom, I'll just show it to you and we're done because it looks that stunning. This is the HP Spectre or Spectre 13. HP doesn't always bother saying 13 because they don't make it in another size. Not to be confused with the Spectre X2 or the Spectre X360, which is a convertible. This one is a traditionally designed laptop. We reviewed this when it first came out 2 generations now, actually. Boy, time passes. And that was in the dark ash silver. You've probably all seen it by now, that nice dark brownish looking thing with shiny gold accents, and that had about 600,000 and something views because it was just like nothing else. This is a stunning piece of kit. What's even nicer about something that's a stunning piece of kit is when the price isn't too terrifying and the performance is there. Now, HP had some things to improve. We're going to find out if they did now. Well, it has to be more than just a pretty face, right? So what's going on here? That's an improvement from the previous generations. Probably a lot of you are somewhat familiar with the Spectre line. It's a 13.3-inch Windows 10 Ultrabook and 10.4 millimeters, making it one of the thinnest laptops on the planet, which HP likes to brag about. It's 2.5 pounds, 2.45 pounds actually, which is 1.1 kilograms approximately, so super duper light. So one of the things they did improve was the fact that being thin and being light's nice, but if it has a big footprint, not so much. And the first model they came out with had a fairly large footprint, so I didn't really find it that much of an advantage in terms of portability compared to, say, something like the Dell XPS 13 in terms of space it takes up in the bag. So what they did is they redesigned it and they moved, much like the Spectre X360 line, they moved the speakers up here instead of being on the side. Thus, they were able to make it a lot narrower and get rid of the big bezel. Well, it wasn't that big, but get rid of the bezels around the display so they're super narrow. So now you have something that really does have a quite small footprint there. It's competitive with the Dell XPS 13 and all those good things, and HP's own Spectre X360 for those of you who want the convertible. Next good thing, Intel 8th generation CPUs. Like I said, if you've been watching my reviews, you know that's a big deal. Finally, Intel made a big leap in performance. So the 15-watt Ultrabook U-series CPUs go up to 4 cores. So they're lots faster, about 40% faster. And you think about that and you compare it to something like the 12-inch MacBook, which has the Core M series of lower power, slower, less smart CPUs. And some other Windows thin and lights do that too. And this thing has full Core i5 and i7 CPUs, 4 cores. That's pretty wicked performance. You can get it with 8 or 16 gigs of DDR3 low power RAM. They're doing that because they're trying to save power. They do that with the X360 as well, using DDR3 low power instead of DDR4. Soldered on board. PCIe NVMe SSDs available in a variety of capacities depending on how much you want to spend. And as ever, this thing is not easy to open. In fact, I'm not going to tear it apart because what you have to do is remove the rubber strips from the bottom. And with the Spectre X360 line, you have to remove one of the strips to get to some of the screws, but it's pretty robust. It's designed to be taken off and put back on. These pretty easily deform, and we have to return our review loaner, so I can't safely do that. But there's an M2 SSD slot in here. The RAM is soldered on. There's really not a lot else you can do inside. Skinny little Ultrabooks tend to have kind of meek sounding speakers, and honestly all of the Spectre line, even the X360 15-inch, to my ears have pretty feeble and meek sounding speakers. Thank God for the headphone jack. But HP this time managed to re-engineer the audio at the Bang & Olufsen sound to actually give this thing competitive audio. It actually sounds better than the 13-inch Spectre X360 in terms of speaker audio. They're on par when it comes to headphones, so that's a nice improvement there as well. The pretty design is obviously still here. In other terms, it's got that neat set of piano hinges on it with that little hydraulic lift. Yes, you can open it with one finger if you want to, lift the lid, that is, and it's just a beauty to behold. Unfortunately, still, the display doesn't go all that far back. So if you're using it in a position where you really want to push the display far back, can't happen, not going to happen. Battery life is improved here. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and that's a good thing because that was one of the shortcomings for the Spectre 13. A small battery, yeah. So for pricing, now pricing is kind of a moving target right now because this is holiday shopping season, and even though this is a new model, HP's already dropped prices from list, and so have all the other retailers. Right now we're seeing the Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD going for $1,099, called $1,100. For $1,200, you can get our Core i7 model with 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. These both have 1080p displays, and here's another exciting thing. Finally, touch. That was one thing I didn't like about the older models because they couldn't use touch because it added weight and it reduced battery. But technology improved, so now they can. And with a small laptop running Windows, I like to have a touchscreen. So that's a standard feature now. You can go up to a 4K display if you want. That's $150. But honestly, it's going to tank battery life. And given how lovely looking this display is, I have no desire to move up to 4K. The keyboard is just like the last generation, and that's a good thing. Sure, it's low travel. It has to be this thin, but boy, is it nice to type on. It doesn't feel punishing, doesn't feel harsh, doesn't feel weird like the MacBook keyboards do these days. It's enjoyable, and the keys are large, and even the backlighting is reasonably easy to see. The backlighting is sort of a bluish white, and you would think on white keys that might not work out, but somehow it does. They did a good job, which means that they should know better with that silver Spectre X360 they make, whose white backlighting does disappear on the silver keys. HP, we're on to you there. The Synaptics trackpad is pretty large given the size of the laptop. I like it. I find it very responsive, very good. Doesn't make me wish I had my Mac or something like that. It's good stuff. The only thing is that the laptop is so thin that even though the body is surprisingly rigid, there's like no flex in this, if you hang it over the edge of a desk, which sometimes, we don't put it completely on a desk, it seems like the clickers are a little bit harder to actuate because it's just so darn thin. Probably the bottom panel isn't supporting the trackpad mechanism as well as it might on the thicker laptop. Minor complaint there, obscure use case maybe. Performance on this? Well, you know what? Performance isn't so much an issue with this. It's always been a good performer. It's been more about the thermals, the noise, the heat, particularly the heat. The first generation model that we reviewed, the one thing I didn't like about it was the amount of heat, especially the metal bar at the back where your ports are. They have improved this. They have a new thermal IR sensor here that's supposed to monitor heat and respond very quickly with the fans to keep the thing cool. It's still a toasty little bugger if you're pushing it hard. If you're using it for, say, just editing some Photoshop files, no, that isn't actually considered even pushing hard. You have to push it harder than that, be video editing, compiling big software programs, something like that, to get it hot. But it will still get hot at the back bar, but not as hot as it did with that first generation where some people actually had discoloration of the gold area from the heat coming out of this thing. That's frightening. Now it's pretty well managed, and it's in the center at the back where it probably won't touch your legs if you're using it on your lap. So better, but still, like all Spectres, this thing is thin, so you're going to feel some heat there. Keyboard, though, does not get hot to the touch. Speaking of the gold bar in the back and those ports, that's where the ports are. It's too skinny on the sides to put any ports whatsoever. So, as ever, we have 3 USB-C ports. 2 of them do Thunderbolt 3. They are grouped together and clearly marked. The one on the far end handles charging for the laptop, and that one is just USB-C Gen 1. You get a USB-C to USB-A adapter in the box, so you're not SOL when you want to go plug in your backup hard drive to restore from a previous computer or something like that. And we have a headphone jack. We do not have an SD card slot. If that sounds a little constrained to you, there's always the Spectre X360. Even if you don't need that flipping function, you do get USB-A ports, for example, and a micro SD card slot, while keeping the Thunderbolt 3. The display is really nice looking. This kind of reminds me of the 4K Spectre X360 15-inch display, and even the 13-inch, where it just has some little special sauce. I don't know, HP just gets the tuning right, so when you look at it, you think that it's sort of like a classy high-end TV experience. Even though it's full HD 1920 by 1080, it's certainly sharp, and that's a perfectly adequate resolution unless you're working with very high-resolution photographs all day long or editing 4K video where you might want more to see even greater detail. But the colors, the saturation, the pop, they're all there. So I don't really feel like, oh, I wish I could go to 4K and lose battery life at the same time. It's a very good display. You can see the metrics. The only thing that falls a little short is the brightness, which I actually didn't notice when using it. I was surprised it measured 275 nits. It looked more like 300, but it is just 275 nits. And this has a Gorilla Glass NBT on top. It's glossy, so reflections will take their toll too. So that's another reason why you might want a brighter display on this. Battery life has not been the Spectre's strong point because, well, it's one of those super ultra portables. There's not a whole lot of room for a battery in there, and what they're doing is giving you the more powerful Core i5 and i7 CPU instead of giving you a low-powered M or Y series CPU, so that's the price you pay. However, HP did increase battery capacity a little bit. It's up to 43 watt hour, which is decent. It's okay. It's a 4-cell battery sealed inside. And now with light to moderate use, which means streaming video, editing some photos on Photoshop, doing some Word and Excel, those sorts of things, it goes about 6.5 hours with brightness set at 100 nits. That's tolerable. Anything at 6 or above is okay in my book. When they fall below that, unless they're gaming laptops, then I really dig them, but that's passable. And if you got even more heavy-handed with the power management to improve battery life, you could probably get to 7. What's nice about the 8th generation CPUs, they're a little more efficient under heavier load. So in case you are using this for Photoshop editing with many files open, lots of layers, and doing video editing and those sorts of things, I've noticed an improved runtime over the previous generation. That previous model would drain pretty fast if you're making it work hard. This one, not so much, which is nice. So it is actually a capable all-around super-duper ultra-portable in that respect. It has the horsepower and it has enough battery stamina to at least make it for a trans-America flight. It comes with this cute little matching white charger here. It's 65 watt. Usually it's only 45 watts for an Ultrabook. They give you 65 watts so it charges more quickly. So no complaints there, USB-C based again. And they give you the extension cable in the box, unlike Apple these days. So this block pulls off, this one goes on. So HP really is on their game when it comes to design, man. There's just like nothing else that looks as good as this. And the nice thing about it is a little bit less bling-tastic because nothing is shiny on this. Nothing is too terribly glossy, but for you, probably fellows who might feel like white's too feminine, the dark ash silver one is still available too, and that's also beautiful. It's put together well. It's quite fast. They've certainly improved the thermals. It's still a toasty laptop if you push it hard, but not so horrifyingly as it used to be. Battery life is decent on it, not exceptional, but it's certainly a great improvement, and it's usable for those of you who don't have to be away from an AC outlet for 8 hours or more a day. The display on it's gorgeous. The keyboard is very usable. I really like it a lot, and the prices are pretty decent considering. Like I said, showing this to a friend, you know, at the store, they thought, oh, that's nice, but I could never afford it. And I told them the price, and they're like, really? I'm there. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.